all 4 maps that we have. So, you know, the albedo, the emissive map, the normal map, and the combined occlusion, roughness, and metallic map. I've exported all those different maps. And now we are going to be going into Marmoset and importing the file that we have. So the first thing we want to do is make sure before we import that stuff that it is a you know, that you've split everything that you want it to be a different piece into that you've assigned it a different material. So it works in a very similar way as a Substance Painter. So everything that has a certain material attached to it, it will split it up once you import it in here. So if we expand the mesh here, as you can see here, I had well, 4 different materials. So I had one for the base body, and another one for which is this one? Okay, so there we go. So the Lambert here, they're not, you know, obviously named properly, but it doesn't really matter in this case because I only have 4. And so this is going to be the fake shadow over the eyes. I have the one called Blend, which is just you know, the entire body. Then I have the transparency for the cornea and kind of like the wetness of the eye. And of course the eyeball. So there you go, I have 4 of them. And so the reason behind this is because we're going to have 4 different materials for the 4 different shaders for these. Because obviously we don't want, you know, the transparent shader to be the same as the rest. This one's going to have, you know, well, first of all, it's going to be transparent, and then it will also have very, very high glossiness and reflectivity. So that might not be the case for the other ones. So that's why we want to split them up depending, you know, on your needs. So another good example might be if you want to have the skin be its own shader. So you might want to have yeah, a different split. So in this case, I have everything into as one mesh, as one piece. But yeah, you might want to split up the, you know, the skin parts to have it to have its own shader. But yeah, so right now I am going to go ahead and kind of like just delete everything in here. So I'm going to keep the default one. So it tries its best, you know, when you import this, it tries its best to maintain the materials that you exported with it. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and create a new one. This one I'm going to call it body. And I'm going to get rid of all the other ones. Delete. So I'm going to assign this one so that I can delete the last one. Just going to do it this way so I make sure that I select everything. Alright, so yeah, whenever a material is assigned to a piece, you can't delete it. So that's why I was making sure that I assign this new one to everything so that I can, you know, get rid of all the extra materials we don't need, the extra shaders. Alright, so now we have a nice nice white character. So we don't want to stop here. So what we're going to be doing in here, it's going to be a fairly, you know, a typical kind of Unreal Engine setup. So I'm going to go ahead and add, well, we're going to go ahead and plug in the maps we already have in here. So the micro surface, is that what I have? Oh no, the surface here is the normal map. So we're going to plug that. So as you can see here, it's a little bit messed up, which is normal. So when you import it in here, you want to make sure that you flip the y-axis. There we go. So yeah, flip this channel. So you invert this channel. So now it looks fine. There we go. So now our normal map is showing. Next, we'll import the gloss. So if we remember, in case you forget, you can always go back in here and look at the you know, that, not this one, the oh yeah, actually, what each channel is. So what each channel represents. So the red channel is going to be, well, you want to hide everything above it for sure. So the red channel is always the occlusion, and then you have the green channel, which is the glossiness, and the blue channels, which is the metallic channel. So ambient occlusion, gloss, metallic. So if we go back in here into Marmoset, the gloss map is going to be, so we'll import, you know, the same one 3 times essentially. So micro surface, have reflectivity, So this is going to be changed to metalness. There we go. And we want occlusion. There we go. So I'm going to plug the map again into the metalness one and then into the occlusion. And now it's just a matter of kind of organizing, you know, which one gets what. So the occlusion map, that is the red channel. So this is fine. It's the first channel, red. Green channel is the gloss. So we're gonna make sure that we select the green channel for this. Gloss here. And then the last one, the metallic is the blue channel. Well, there's two more that are left. So the albedo, so we're gonna plug that in right now. There we go. And the emissive. So we're gonna make sure that we add that in and then plug our emissive map. And there we go. So we have kind of like the base shader right now. So everything is in there, everything's plugged in. Now it's just a matter of kind of like fine tuning things a little bit, making sure everything is correct, because right now it's not. So another thing that we want to make sure is to always invert the glossiness, which is this one. There we go. So now it displays properly. So now, you know, the shirt is has a very matte finish, and then the metallic pieces are very shiny, just the way it should be. So now we're good to go. All right, so as far as, you know, plugging things in, that's pretty much as far as I'm gonna go. And then we can play, you know, we can always play with the emissive value here. Crank that up if you want. You can assign a color to it. So in this case, I'm just gonna leave it white. And so now that we have kind of like, we'll get back to this, you know, as we arrange kind of the camera and all the different kind of like the scene settings to make sure that we have exactly what we want. But for now, it's good enough. We have a good base. Now let's move on to the rest of the eyes. So as we can see here, we have kind of like the you know, this piece here, the Lambert, which is the fake eyeshadow. So we're going to do that right now. So that you see, you know, it's going to be on a white background, so the eyeball, so you'll see it pretty clearly. So for this, I'm going to add, you know, the same material to it to make sure. So I already added it, so it should be fine by default. And then what we want to do is add a transparency layer. So, you know, not cut out. That's going to give, it's going to, give kind of like a really, really sharp edge. We don't want that. Instead, we want the ditter option. There we go. So you kind of get, you know, up close, you get this this noisy kind of gradient, but from a distance, it actually gives a really, really nice kind of like soft shadow over the eyeball, which is exactly what we wanted. So I'm gonna make sure in here to go the render settings of the scene, and I'm gonna crank up a couple things. So high-res shadows, I want to make that ambient occlusion. We want that too. Local reflections. So you can see what it does. It's a nice effect all over the body. Occlusion strength, so you can play with, you know, the occlusion levels here, how far it grabs and how strong it is. So yeah, it depends of your taste, of course. So you can have something that's really, really tight to get kind of like this fake outline look. Doesn't look that great in this case. So what I like to do is something it's not too far, not too strong, but that gives that adds a little bit of depth. So yeah, that looks good. Global illumination, of course. You know, every time you have all these options, if you can enable them, because it just looks a lot better. So it's a more realistic, it's a more realistic look, especially for the metals. So yeah, that looks pretty nice. And then everything else, as far as this, you can increase the occlusion details if your computer can run it. So this tends to slow down a little bit. So, you know, 4x probably too much. 2x looks good. All right, this stuff, we don't need to worry about it. And yeah, there we go. So let's go ahead and create the transparency material. So what I'm going to do is select one of the presets here, Glass Simple. Drop that on here and see what we have. All right, so not bad, but not great. So it looks like she's, you know, tearing up. So we're gonna tweak that a little bit to make it a little bit sharper. But there's a couple things here we don't need. So we don't need this. We don't need gloss. We don't need albedo. We don't need diffuse. We need this though. So what I'm gonna change here is GGX to Blinfong. Actually, let's try GGX. See what that looks like. We're gonna change the other one here to Blinfong. And we can reduce the occlusion, doesn't really matter. And then tighten this up here. So that's the gloss part we want to tighten up so that's as small as possible. So in this case, you know, the lights, the ambient lights is very diffuse, like the scene is just white all around, so it's catching up a lot more light than it should normally. We'll see, you know, this will actually get toned down a lot when we add like lights in the scene and like a proper background. But yeah, for now, let's see. This is good, transparency. So you can tone this down if you want, you know, if it's still a little too intense. That's just a hint. At the same time, it looks good over the cornea, so, you know, crank it up. Just a little bit. There we go. And let's see. So what I'm trying to get rid of is kind of like the, you know, this part here. So in certain angles, it's going to be a little bit more obvious, but that should be subtle enough. All right, so we're gonna keep that, and well, now I'm just going to duplicate this again. Duplicate body eyeshadow. So it's going to be eyeballs. And we're going to drag that onto the eyeballs and adjust the glossiness a little bit. Not the glossiness, but the emissive. So we want this to not be too crazy, but we want a little bit of it. So a little bit of a tint to fake the SSS there. So looks pretty good. No need for transparency, so we can kill that. And yeah, for this we'll want to tweak these things a little bit more here. So let's see. I'm gonna add a secondary reflection to this as well, so that I can crank this up. Make it nice and glossy, gorilla eyeball. And so looking here, you know, like you don't want it to be too clean. It's not a crystal ball, so just a little bit of a blur. That's starting to look pretty good. So there you go, some nice shiny eyeballs now. It's not perfect, but you know, we're not going for realism anyways. We just want something nice and stylized. So now with our glowy eyes, should look pretty cool when everything is, you know, with a darker background and some nicer render settings. So as you can see also in the low poly before I imported in here, I kind of, you know, move the eyes to the side. So this is in preparation for posing. I just wanted to get that done. right now. But yeah, the posing is going to be in ZBrush. But I just wanted to rotate the eyes in Maya real quick before. So there you go, that's why. And there we have it. So now let's tweak the scene. So this could be, this could give us decent decent screenshots, or decent turntable, but we want to go a little bit we want to tweak that a little bit more. So I'm gonna go ahead and select one of the presets here, and the presets are just different environments. So some of them are not going to work at all. Some will work really nice, some will work kind of so-so. So we're just gonna pick one that looks all right. So I mean, in theory, if you made your model the correct way, it should work in all the different scenes. So it shouldn't be too bright, it shouldn't be too dark or anything like that. So like look at the image here, and like would the character fit in there? Would it make sense? Yeah, kind of. The lighting would match, the intensity of everything would match. So those darker environments like this one here, this is a good one to adjust the emissive for the main kind of like the body. And the eyeballs too. So the eyeballs now are like kind of glowing in the dark. So I'm gonna drop that. That's not too crazy. There we go. Something like this. And then the body itself also, I'm going to reduce the glow on that just a bit so that the skin doesn't look like it's glowing in the dark. 1.1. Nothing. So that looks dead, right? So that doesn't look good. We want to add just a little bit. So one is good. Gives a nice kind of like, yeah, it gives life back into the skin. So, but yeah, obviously we don't want this environment. We are going to try other ones. That one's not bad. It's always nicer when you have something that's high contrast. So it just makes for more interesting kind of screenshots, more striking. So the one we started with. This is not bad, but a little bit dark. But remember, it's not that big of a deal if it's dark, or if it's too bright. We can always adjust things and add lights and things like that. What you want to get is just something that has like a nice environment for your character, something that works nicely with the colors. Yeah, I'm gonna go with this one here. So we're gonna go with the museum. So that should do it. As you can see here, it's already blurred a lot. So mode ambient sky, blurred sky. I really don't want the scene in the background, so I always select ambient sky. So that's a little bit more kind of like a neutral background. But we're going to drop the brightness for that. As you can see here, it doesn't actually drop the brightness for the character itself. So that will keep its its brightness even if it's complete black. So I'll go for something that's dark. And then yeah, you can just bring back sort of highlights and like had a nice rim light with added lights. So that's what we're going to be doing right now. So very simple. Click and create a new light. So what I plan to do with this is normally I go for a like 3, 4 to 5 lights per scene. The ones I like to use are, wait, hold on, we're not seeing the guide here. There we go. So the ones I like to use are Omni Lights because I don't know, they're just cleaner. I don't like to see all this crap on here when I work, and they work great. So we're gonna switch that to the light type to Omni, and you can think of Omni Lights as just kind of like big spheres, and when you crank up the brightness, it makes the sphere a lot more intense. And then the distance and attenuation curve. The distance is essentially the size of the sphere. So, if the character is not anywhere near the sphere or is not within the sphere, that's not going to be lit. And then the attenuation is kind of just how, like, the fuzziness of it, like how it fades, how quickly it fades from light to dark. So, yeah, it's the kind of stuff like you play with it a little bit and you understand really quickly what it does. But initially what I want to do is create the rim light. So right now, the character is kind of the fabric, the shirt, it's not really popping. So what we want to do is make sure that this really stands out. So what I like to do is add 1 or 2 rim lights in the back. In this case, let's go for 2. So I'm going to start with this one here. So yeah, rim lights always a little bit brighter. Something like this, maybe a little bit higher. And then I'm gonna create another one. Copy and paste. Oops. Copy, duplicate, and drag that on the other side. Maybe a little bit lower, so that doesn't look like it's too similar. But you can see like this. Now we get the arms. Yeah, it just looks a lot better now. The character pops a lot more. Doesn't get lost in the background. And of course, you can't you can tint those lights. So I'm gonna try maybe like one side is a little bit bluer, perhaps. Crank up the intensity on that one. Maybe play with the distance so it only touches kind of like the top of the character, not the feet so much. Alright, so yeah, something like this. It looks pretty cool. Alright, so we are going to start with this and then create a new one. So this one I like it to be in front of the character to eliminate kind of like her torso. Excuse me. And Omni Light again. Gonna bring that closer. And then the size of your lights, the distance and all this stuff here, the brightness, the distance, attenuation curve. This has to do with the size of your character. So if your character is really, really small, when you export it out of Maya, or if it's really big, then those values might be different. So don't take the values as, for what they are. It's relative. So let's place this right here. So this is kind of like the main light source, right? So we want this to be kind of bright. But not too much in the front, otherwise it looks a little bit boring. It's kind of like not... We want to get some nice contrast on the character. Something like this maybe. And I'll tint that a little. So this one I like kind of like a slightly purple, like violet, light violet color. Yeah, something like this. Alright, and then I'm gonna pop one more for the ground. So for the that's going to go right by her feet to fake kind of the the main light source bouncing off of the ground and back onto her, kind of like a subtle bounce light, so that we can get some nice highlights on the booth. Because without this, it looks kind of dull, right? It doesn't, like, you don't see any kind of specular, any kind of material. So yeah, by bringing this in, we'll be able to get some nice highlights on here, so we can actually tell what those materials are and how shiny it is. There you go. So obviously you don't want this to be too bright, so that it doesn't overpower the character, because remember the focal point is around her face. So for this I like to choose kind of like a brownish color. Like that maybe. Try playing with the distance so that it's not so, doesn't go so too high on the character. And for this one I like to have to turn the shadows off, because some things I don't like is like this thing here, right? So having this shadow here, if it's a bounce light, normally it'll be like very diffuse and you wouldn't get this harsh kind of shadow on the character. So we are going to remove that. uncheck that thing. Alright. So that works pretty well. It's subtle enough, but it helps. Okay, so there's two more that I want to add that are specific to this character. These little things here, her antennas. So I'm going to create a new light, a new Omni Light once more, and kind of drag that right onto her antennas. So something like this. Because those are supposed to be shiny, so they should be emitting some sort of light. Pink, some nice pink lights. Alright. Let's see, crank this up. And I'm going to remove the shadows for this as well, because I'm not going to go that far. I'm going to make sure that the distance is very short, so that we get maybe some highlights like on the shoulders, but that's about it, right? So on the head here, on the hair, and then on the shoulders a little bit, but that's it. So like, you know, if it goes on here, that's probably a little bit too far. So I'm gonna reduce that. Okay, so let's see. With, without, with, without. Alright. So it doesn't seem like it makes that big of a difference, but it's mostly if the character is next to something else, like next to a wall or you know, next to another character, then those are going to be a lot more visible. So this time again, cast shadow. Okay. Alright, so now I'm pretty much done in terms of light. So, you know, when we do the final shot, I might have an extra light in there that kind of rotates around the character, you know, to record some cool videos. But yeah, as far as, you know, light setup, that would be pretty good. So we can rotate the character to get different angles from those lights. Yeah, get a nice lot of variety there. So if we get some different dramatic shots with like some really harsh lights on one side and not much on the other side. So this allows us to do a lot of cool, take a lot of cool screenshots. So I am going to rotate her back into position, and then you notice here the those lights didn't move with it. So what you can do is take those two lights here and then drag them into the mesh folder, so that when you rotate the mesh folder, then the lights move along with it, but the others don't. Alright, so we're going to save this, and I am going to hide the guides because I am done with this. So now all I have is a character in the scene, looking pretty cool. And the last bit before I move on to doing some variations for the character, actually we're gonna do one variation, so to change her outfit, to give her a different look. And we'll see how easy that is with the setup that we have. But before that, let's check out the render settings. No, the camera, the main camera settings. So this is where you do kind of like all the final tweaks, as I said, and a couple of things that I want to pay attention to. So a lot of this I'm not going to touch, at least not yet. A couple of things that I like are strength. So this, like how, not strength, but the sharpen strength. As you can see here, it just sharpens everything. So you don't want to go too high with this, but high enough that you get, you know, you get kind of like those details on the metal, you know, a little bit crisper. So it's a fine balance, so don't overdo it, otherwise it looks a little bit weird, like on the face right now it's a little bit too crazy. And you can see it also sharpens kind of like the shadow. So yeah, it's, you know, don't go too harsh on this, but a little bit definitely adds. Right, and oh, there's a limit to it that you can play with. So you can get some really cool styles with this, you know, like a lot more stylized than you had before. So this is a little too crazy, but I'm gonna drop the strength. So I like this. This, you know, this reads really well. It's really crisp. You can see all the details, and yeah, it's not overkill, at least in my opinion. All right, let's go back here. Another one that I like is Bloom. So Bloom is really cool, and you can see it for you can see it really clearly at the top of the head here. If you look here, while I crank this up, so it just adds a little bit of a light bounce, like a yeah. And especially if you have like some really bright lights, that makes a lot of sense to have that. And when you have some things that are really shiny, like those super glossy kind of like gem things. When they catch, when the camera catches them in a certain angle, they kind of like glitter like this. So it looks really cool. Like if it's static, if it's a static image, you're not gonna really see it ever. But when we do the turntables, when this thing rotates, and like you see the kind of like the little things like glittering like this, you know, like on the belt here, and some it has a little has a really cool effect. So again, not too crazy, but a little bit. It looks pretty cool. And grain, not a fan, so always take this off if there is any. And then tone mapping, we're not going to do anything, so you know, contrast, all this stuff. It should be good the way it is. You can always do the final tweaks in Photoshop. Like I prefer not to touch this too much. And let's see, lens. So we can have depth of field if you want. You know, some to get some like really close-up shots of her nose or something. But you know, if you do close-up shots, those are always really cool to have. There you go. Now, if I were to do it like a portrait, you get this nice blur. It really, I don't know. It's a really striking image. It's a lot better than just this, you know, where like a lot of the details up close don't really read that well, especially the hair here, like on the sides it looks a little bit funky, but when you add this, now it's like, oh, cool. But yeah, for now, no, not needed, but we might add this a little bit later. And let's see, flare is the kind of like the other one that's like, it's cool a little bit to do, you know, when you do turntables. Again, it's something that will catch the light in certain angles. So you can see here, it's a little bit crazy, like it's just camera, kind of like lens effects. Sometimes, you know, if it's subtle, it can be cool. Right now it's too much, but. So that seems reasonable. So we can keep that. So very low setting. And then you have another one that I like is Chromatic Aberration here. So I'm going to crank it up a lot so that you can see what it does. But yeah, you get the kind of like the channels that are shifting, and you get these red outlines, blue outlines, green outlines. So you don't want to go too crazy with this, but it does add a cool look if you have it very subtle, especially if you have like some really bright lights. You know, going from really bright to really dark, to fake kind of like that misalignment of channels. Looks cool. Hi there, this is Marc Brunet, and this is the ultimate career guide for 3D artists. So if you've ever considered a career as a 3D artist, this course is definitely for you. So it's my best attempt yet at condensing my 10 years of knowledge working in the game industry into a guide that is packed with content and that covers absolutely everything when it comes to the job of a 3D artist. I've been working in the game industry for many years, about 10 years in total, and the last 8 of those years were spent at Blizzard Entertainment, where I worked on games like Titan / Overwatch, Heroes of the Storm, as well as StarCraft. So here is what we are going to be covering. The guide is going to be split in 7 chapters. So I'll start with the basics of what the job is and what are the different paths that you can take. The second chapter is going to be about the techniques. Since this is aimed at beginners as well as more advanced artists looking for a career bump, I'll cover some extra stuff to bring everybody up to speed. So we'll look at all the software used in the industry, and I'll demo in real time 2 of the most popular pipelines for creating game assets. The third chapter is going to be all about the 3D industry. So those are all the things that I wish I knew before I started. Pretty much everything I can think of as far as what it's like when you actually get in and start working as a professional. And then I'll jump right into the first mega chapter, where I'll be covering the entire creation of a hand-painted character from start to finish. So this is going to be a really big chapter. We'll also be building a great base mesh and sculpt that we'll be able to reuse in future projects. And then that brings me to the next chapter, which is another monster chapter covering the entire creation of a more current gen PBR character using the base body from the previous chapters. In chapter 6, we'll create cool color variations. We'll do a rigging and posing in ZBrush. And also we are going to be looking at how to set up the shaders and the scene to be able to create some awesome shots in Marmoset. This way we'll have some awesome content to upload to our portfolio. The last chapter is going to be all about getting the job. So all the necessary steps that are required. So from exposure, how to get the most exposure and the fastest way possible, to applying, and finally to nailing the interview. Now with the videos, you also get all the extra content, including the base mesh, the base sculpt, and everything else. All the scenes that I'll be creating will be there available for download, just so that you can better follow along. The review so far has been absolutely amazing, so I'm really grateful that people are actually enjoying the content, and this should give you a kind of like a good indication of what you can expect from this. Alright, and if you do get it, please show me, the kind of characters that you create out of this, or the kind of assets that you create out of this. I'd be so excited to see. Now we have a ton of content to cover, so let's get started. Alright, see you in there.